Erev Tov, great to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Hope everyone is safe and well. I wanted to express my appreciation to Frida and Ernie Katz, who is sponsoring this year tonight. And they're sponsoring this year in honor of their son, Jacob Katz's upcoming birthday. And his family and our entire community celebrates his accomplishments at the Lulav Boys School and also everything that he does as a mensch. But I know in terms of his work at Lulav, he works every day as part of their office staff and is really most beloved in the school. So happy birthday, Jacob, and thank you to the Katz family, to Ernie and Frida, for sponsoring this year in his honor. It's been a year since the pandemic began, and we were preparing for Pesach a year ago, and so we're now, here we are again, and I'm hopeful that this year Pesach will be better and a little more relaxed than last year. Certainly in the weeks always leading up to Pesach, so the tension begins to rise, the stress levels begin to go up. And I've shared the story in the past of the Bubby at the Seder, that when it came time for the 10 plagues, so we take a drop out of the cup for each plague. And what this woman did, this Bubby, she used her finger and she removed 11 drops out of the cup. And they said, Bubby, why are you removing 11 drops? There are only 10 plagues. And she said, for me, preparing for Pesach is also a plague. So what I'm going to try to do tonight with all of you, and thank you so much for joining, is to try to ease the pain of the plague. And I'm going to try to essentially clarify, review, explain what is required to streamline it, to make it as easy as possible. I can't promise that it's going to be that I'm going to make it enjoyable or that I'm going to make it totally easy, but to try to make it a little easier, a little more explainable and understandable. And I think it's easier than a lot of people think. So let's get right to it. With regards to Pesach, so you have many mitzvot that are associated with the Chag. You have the mitzvah of eating matzah and relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim at the Seder. But when it comes to the prohibitions of Pesach, so there's really two basic prohibitions to be aware of. You know, we get all involved and consumed with the preparing for the holiday and observing the holiday, but it's important to really go back to the basics, that there's two prohibitions. And the first prohibition is that you're not allowed to eat chametz. This is learned from the pasuk, Ki chol ochel chametz v'nichrta hanefesh, that a person who eats chametz, he's going to be punished with karetz. In other words, he's going to be cut off. It's a very, very serious prohibition against eating chametz and also benefiting in any way from chametz products. And the second basic prohibition of Pesach is described by Chazal as bal yira, bal yimatzeh. And these are really two separate psukim. The first one is in Parshat Bo, Shivas Yamim, Se'or lo yimatzeh bevatechem, that for 7 days you shouldn't find any leaven in your homes. And then in Parshat Re'eh, in Sefer Dvarim, it says, V'lo yera elecha se'or, also that you shouldn't see in your home any chametz, any leaven products. What these psukim are teaching us is really two separate psukim, two separate mitzvot, but the rabbis put them together and called it bal yira, bal yimatzeh. And it's important to understand that there's no prohibition really to see chametz over the course of Pesach. The prohibition is really to own chametz. A person is not allowed to have any ownership over the course of Pesach, any ownership of chametz. And that includes, of course, bread and pasta and cookies and cereals and anything that's made from the 5 grains that's not guarded. To prevent it from becoming chametz, you have to assume it's chametz. What is it about chametz, though, that led the Torah to make a prohibition against owning it? The Ran, living in Spain, 13th century, explains with two reasons. He says that with regular non-kosher food, usually there's also a prohibition to eat it. There might be a prohibition also to benefit from it, like meat and milk mixtures. But there's almost always no prohibition to own non-kosher food, pork and lobster and a cheeseburger. There's a prohibition to eat it, and in some cases there's a prohibition to benefit from it. And the reason the Ran says that chametz is different on Pesach is because it's permitted all year round, and you've become accustomed to eating it. And so the Torah needs to make a more stringent prohibition to ensure compliance. And so it says it's prohibited not only to eat it or benefit from it, but you also are not allowed to even buy your Rabbi Matzah, you're not even allowed to own it. And the second reason of the Ran is because chametz is an isur chamur, as evidence from the fact that only by chametz, you have this, chametz is prohibited and punishable with kares. And so you see that this is a very, very severe prohibition, and maybe that's the reason why the Torah goes out of its way, so to speak, to prohibit even ownership. So in sum, there's two basic prohibitions. You can't eat chametz over the course of the 8 days of Pesach, and you're not allowed to be in ownership of chametz. So the question is, why must you clean your home in advance of Pesach? And the reason, of course, is that because you can't own any chametz because of Bali Rabbi Matzeh. And secondly, if chametz is lying around and all over the place, you might come and eat it. And so that's why a person has to prepare their home and put some effort in advance to get ready for Pesach. The good news is that you don't need to rip out the carpeting. You don't need, my friends, to replace the floor tiles. You don't need to blowtorch the curtains. You don't need to do any of those things. And so while there is a lot of effort and work that goes into the holiday Pesach, what I'm trying to do is to calm you down, to relax you, to reassure you it's going to be okay. We're going to get through it. The Jewish people got through Pesach the first time around getting out of Mitzrayim, and we're going to be able to get through the Pesach this time around. And the good news is that there's a few different mechanisms in our battle against chametz, right? This is a war. This is a battle of getting rid of chametz. And there's different mechanisms and different tools that we have in our boxes, different weapons that we have to eliminate and deal with the chametz. And the first is the traditional method of clearing your home. And yes, that you're supposed to clean your home, and that leads to the bedikas chametz that we do this year on Thursday night. We do it a day early because Erev Pesach is Shabbos, as if Pesach wasn't complicated enough. This year it's even more complicated because the day before Pesach is Shabbos, but we're going to discuss that, the great balancing act, next week. But what you do is you do have to clean up and clean out clear your home from chametz. And that effort in the days leading up to Pesach, in the weeks or days leading up to Pesach, is leading to a bedika, to a search of your home that you do on Thursday night. And the way to clear your house, you know how to clear the chametz from your house, but the floor should be swept and the carpets vacuumed. Desk drawers should be quickly checked. And if you're blessed to have a family member or a housekeeper do it for you, take advantage of that. And so it's either you to do it or someone else that you appoint to be your shliach to do it, to sweep the floor, vacuum, the carpet should be vacuumed, desk drawers should be quickly checked. You don't have to go through every single pocket of every single item of clothing, but certainly in your jackets, in your coats, you should check the pockets, just to give it a quick check to make sure that there's no Twix bars, that there's no bags of Cheerios or granola bars that you sometimes put in your pockets for a road trip or whatever it is. Check your pockets, check your backpacks and purses, and give a quick check of the couch cushions. Those are the main places that you have to check. The halacha really is that anywhere that chametz is generally brought, you should check. If it's a place where chametz is never brought, like a bathroom, then there's no need to check that area. If you have children in the house, either that they're always there or that sometimes visit, so then it's more challenging because then they can bring chametz to all the different places in the house. And if you have adult children or children who have the age to do so, they should be asked to check their drawers of their desk, to check through their backpack, and to do some of the basics of cleaning their room, to participate in the cleaning of the house. But either way, the key here is not to go overboard. If you don't bring chametz there, there's no need to check. You don't have to rip up the carpet. You don't have to replace the floor tiles. It's just clearing out chametz from the different areas of your house. The second mechanism of when it comes to cleaning your house is called bittul. and the night of the bedika, and also in the morning. This year we do it the night of the bedika, and we do it Shabbos morning. So then we nullify any chametz that we may or we may not know about. There's a debate between Rashi and Tosfot exactly how bittul works. Rashi says that really it's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of tashbisu. The pasuk says that you should eliminate chametz from your house on the day prior to Pesach, and that's why we do the bedika, and we do the burning of the chametz before Pesach, because it's in fulfillment of this mitzvah of tashbisu, excuse me. And so, and there's the rabbis understood that pasuk to be on the day prior to Pesach. That's when a person has to do this bedika to do the biur. So Rashi says, from the fact that it doesn't say tavaru, it says rather tashbisu, that you should just eliminate it. So you see from here that as long as you nullify it in your mind, as long as you say in your mind that it's not chametz, but rather it's like dirt, it's like dust and ashes, it's like nothing, so then that is considered a fulfillment of this mitzvah that applies prior to Pesach of tashbisu, and essentially you've gotten rid of the chametz. And Tosfos disagrees. And Tosfos say that no, that when you do bittul, you're really relinquishing ownership over the chametz. You're declaring that this chametz is not yours, but rather it's ownerless. And so it's like a workaround. You're avoiding the prohibition of Bal Yirah Bal Yamatzeh because you're declaring it ownerless, and then it's not yours. However you slice it, and actually we incorporate both Rashi and Tosfot in our bittul. We say that kol chamir v'chamiya, any leaven products that we know about, lahave hefker ki afra diara. We say that it should be ownerless, like dust of the earth. The reason why we say that it should be ownerless is in accordance and deference to the position of Tosfot, and then we say it should be like afra diara, it should be like dust, inedible, like dust of the earth, and that's in accordance with the position of Rashi. However you slice it, when it comes to bittul, that's really all you need to do with regards to crumbs. So if it's in the main area of the house, of course you want to clear it out and you want to have the area swept up and vacuumed. But let's say if you have stuff underneath the fridge or behind the fridge, you do not need to pull out the fridge to clean the area. You do not need to rip out the cabinets and to go under the cabinets. If it's in the front area of the fridge, of course, so then on the floor there, you give a quick clean. So when it comes to crumbs, the Torah was not, my friend, the Torah was not given to angels. The Torah was given to human beings like you and I, and it's very, very hard to check every single nook and cranny in your house. And therefore, crumbs which are inaccessible, you should not worry about. It should not cause you anxiety, because there's this concept of bittul. You can nullify the chametz and make it ownerless. Now you're going to say to me, hey, Rabbi, so then let me just do that. And said, this way I don't have to clean my house for 2 weeks, and I don't have to worry about anything. I could just do bittul. I could just nullify and make it ownerless. Well, the reason why we don't want to rely just on that is because if you have Twix bars sitting around and you have Oreo cookies sitting around, so then you might come and eat those. How can you resist a Twix bar? And so you might come and violate the halacha of eating chametz on Pesach. So that's why you can't just rely on bittul and leave chametz lying around, because there's still a prohibition of eating the chametz, and even if you nullified it, but it's still chametz, objectively speaking. And the second reason is also because since this is something that requires really thoughtfulness, and you have to really put intention into doing the bittul, we don't want to just rely on that. Okay, so bittul is certainly a mechanism. We employ it to nullify anything that we might have that we didn't get to, but we're not just going to rely on bittul. We're also going to do the clearing of the apartment or the clearing of the house leading up to the bedika and biur, as we discussed. And the third mechanism is called mechirat chametz. And you all know about that. There are some that are stringent to not rely on the mechira for actual chametz items. They start preparing in advance of Pesach to finish up the pasta that they have, to finish up the cereal that they have, and to shop at Costco or Trader Joe or one of the local kosher marts and have in mind in advance to time it so that you don't have so much chametz left over. But the widespread custom, and for those people, they just sell products that are tarovas chametz, that might have a little bit of chametz in it. But many are stringent. There are some who are stringent not to rely on mechiras chametz when it comes to actual chametz items. The widespread custom, though, is to rely on the selling of chametz by all chametz items, even by a good geshmak challah, by cookies, by pasta, whatever it might be. Don't get carried away in purchasing these stuff prior to Pesach. You don't want to stockpile it for no reason. But the custom is that we rely on mechiras chametz, that you're completely selling it to the non-Jews. So you're not clearing your house. You're not doing bedika and biur on it. You're not really doing bittul on it because it's hard to do bittul on actual big products like that. Doesn't really make so much sense to do bittul, and we're not sure if that's going to work on something that's so significant and substantive, like a box of chametz. But we are going to rely on this mechiras chametz, and so that's the third mechanism. And here, you don't sell your chametz to the rabbi. Okay, I certainly don't want your chametz. During the course of the year, if you want to invite me to your home, then that's another thing. But I don't want your chametz certainly when it gets close to Pesach. But what you do is, when you meet with the rabbi in person, or this year we're doing it with an online form. We're encouraging people to do it online because of the challenges of getting together in person. So what you do is you fill out a form and you appoint me, or you appoint whichever rabbi you appoint as your agent, and that rabbi is serving as your agent, who you're authorizing to sell any of your chametz that you put into the designated locations. And so that's how it works. And then the rabbi, on your behalf, sells your chametz to the non-Jew, in advance of Pesach. In the morning before Pesach. This year it'll be Friday morning. So those are the three. And then of course, when you sell chametz, you should you put it into a cabinet and you tape it up, or you put it into the garage and you put it in a separate spot, secure spot, that nobody is going to access over the course of Pesach. That, my friends, is how you get your home ready for Pesach. I believe, and you could correct me if I think it should take an hour or two at the most. Okay, I'm not counting the vacuuming and the sweeping, because that's a chore that we usually do, or we could have a friend do, we could have a housekeeper do, or you could do also. But even taking that into account, but certainly if we don't take that into account, it should really just take an hour or two at most to get the home ready for Pesach. Again, two prohibitions: you can't own and you can't eat chametz. Those are the two prohibitions, and we have three mechanisms, three weapons. Number one, bedika and biur, which is clearing away chametz from the house. It's bittul, which is nullification, and then it's putting away the chametz products into a cabinet and making sure that those are sold. So it's those three different weapons that we employ on getting the house prepared for Pesach. You're welcome to put any questions into the chat box, and maybe also wait till we get a little bit further to ask your questions. We'll have a chance you can unmute yourself and ask questions a little bit later, and also you can continue putting questions into the chat box. Okay, someone said about posting the spelling of the term. So bittul is bet yud tet vav lamed. Bittul, bittul is the way I usually spell it in English. Bittul, the Ivrit, is bet yud tet vav lamed. Bedika is bet dalad yud kufay. And Vic, you'll ask the mechira question maybe a little bit later if that's okay. Let's move now. Okay, now we're getting warmed up. We're getting relaxed. Okay, this rabbi is not as stringent as I always thought he was. He's, and you know what? I think we have a chance to do this. We got this. There's only a couple of prohibitions. We got a few different weapons, and you gotta have the skill. You gotta have the weapons, which we have. You have to have the skill how to use them, which I try to give you a couple of the details of how to use them. and of course you have to have the will to use them, and we all have the will. So let's keep moving on now. Let's move from the house into the kitchen. With regards to the kitchen, now I'm not getting into, I understand it's not so easy to prepare the meals for Yontif, but that I'm leaving to you. I'm not getting into that topic of, the meals you're preparing. In other words, I understand there's a lot of effort that goes into preparing for a Shabbat, that goes into preparing for a Yontif, and certainly if you have the privilege of hosting some people for Yontif, and you're able to do it in a safe way, so that obviously requires some work. But with regards to getting the kitchen ready, it's really not too hard, as long as you have a basic understanding of some of the different categories and principles. And the knowledge is power. And once you have a knowledge of the different things, whether it comes to the home or the kitchen, it kind of, relaxes and gives you a game plan. With regards to the kitchen, first thing is that the foods, I mean, it's obvious, but that the foods need to be kosher for Pesach. So that's number one. Number two is that the pots and the pans and the silverware and the dishes need to be kosher for Pesach. And your appliances, any appliances that you use in preparing the foods for Pesach or on Pesach, also, of course, need to be kosher for Pesach. And the reason for that is because you can't eat chametz, and you also can't benefit from any taste of chametz that is found in the walls of the pots or in the silverware. There's taste in there. It absorbs the chametz, and so that's why you have to make sure that they're kosher for Pesach. And there's really two different ways to have kosher for Pesach pots. Either you have pots that are designated, as your Pesach pots, right? So you have, if you have kosher for Pesach pots and pans and silverware, then you're good to go and you're all set. But if you don't have that, or if there's some pots and pans that you don't have that are kosher for Pesach, then of course what you need to do is you're going to need to kasher the different items. And so let's review some of the basic laws of koshering. One of the basic principles of koshering is kabolo kach polto. Kabolo kach polto. And what kabolo kach polto means is that the way that a product absorbs something, that's the way that we're going to be able to remove it, the way we're going to exercise it, the way we're going to extricate it from the pot. Okay, the way the pot absorbs the taste, that's the way to remove the taste. So if you have a pot or a pan, so what I want to share with you is that when it comes to koshering, and that's what we're going to be talking about for the next section of this shiur, is that when it comes to koshering either utensils and dishes or the appliances, so you have to be aware of that basic principle. But there's really three forms of koshering. The first one is called libun, the second one is called hagala, and the third one is called irui rotchin. And I'm not just doing that on purpose to use words that seem to make no sense to you, but maybe some of you do recognize those words. But in any case, libun means the following. If you have a pan or a grill that's used for food without the medium of water, and it's just used with fire, so then let's say a grill, so then this item requires koshering through fire. In other words, if it's used without the medium of water, so then you have to kosher it without using the medium of water, and you just use straight fire. That's called libun. And that's where you have to heat it to a really, really high temperature, where it's like intense red hot heat to burn out the chametz. The second kind of koshering is called hagala. This is the classic, main, most widely used form of koshering. If you have a pot or a pan that's used for food with the medium of water, so then it requires what's called a hagala, which is koshering with boiling water. And we'll explain more how to do that in a moment. And then the third kind of koshering is called irui rotchin, and that's if you have a countertop or a sink that you're not grilling food on the countertop, you're not cooking food with the countertop, but something might have fallen on it. You put things on it. So the way to remove the chametz taste is by pouring boiling water on it. That's called irui rotchin. Those are the three main forms of koshering. Yes, there's something called milui over irui, filling up glasses 24 hours at a time, 3 times. But the three basic ones are libun, hagala, irui rotchin. There are only certain materials that can be kashered. All metals can be kashered. Smooth wood utensils can be kashered. Granite or marble countertops can be kashered. Okay. Plastic is a debate, but I have been taught by some of my Rabbeim that you could be lenient and you could also kasher plastic. When I say kasher, what do I mean? I mean for Pesach, in the context of Pesach, it means that it was used all year round for chametz, and now you want to make it kosher for usage on Pesach or to prepare food for Pesach. But also, this is if it became treif, right? If for some reason an item, a spoon or a pot became treif, or you purchase it from a non-Jew, so then you're going to need to kasher it. And if it's a new pot that you purchase, or if it's a pot that you purchase from the non-Jew, then you're going to have to tovel it in a mikveh as well. But in terms of koshering, so the following materials can be kashered: metal, wood, granite, and according to many opinions, plastic. On the other hand, however, the materials that you can't kasher, that are not kasherable, are porcelain, earthenware, china, formica. Those are not able to be kashered. There's a leniency when it comes to china, in that when you purchase new china, so it doesn't need to be kashered, it's new. And it doesn't even need to be toveld. Okay, china does not need to be toveld in a mikvah. That's an important thing. You want to tell a new couple, they get a new set of china, they don't have to rush over to the kela mikvah to tovel it. That's a leniency by China. The stringency by China is that you're not able to kasher it. In other words, if it's something that became not kosher, or it was chametz, or it was owned by a non-Jew, generally speaking, you're going to run into problems because it's going to be very problematic and difficult to kasher it. There may be some exceptions in certain situations, but if you let's say you have an expensive piece of china that became not kosher, so then give me a call or send me an email. There may be there may be some strategy that you could employ, but generally speaking, we don't kasher china and porcelain and things like that. With regards to glass, according to the Ashkenazim, do not kasher glass. And Pyrex and Duralex and these things, we usually assume are like glass, and so we don't kasher glass. We don't kasher glass for Pesach. All year round, usually glass doesn't even need koshering. That's a separate discussion, but for Pesach was certainly machmir not to kosher glass. One important rule. So now you have the three types of koshering. You have the different materials that are that are able to be kashered, and then you have those that are just that you're unable, that are irredeemable, unsalvageable if they became not kosher. One important rule in kashrut, just one other kind of principle before we get into the details, is the concept of ben yomo. And the ben yomo means that a taste is only productive, is only positive within the first 24 hours. After 24 hours, the taste in the walls of the pot or the walls of the in the silverware itself is going to be considered no sein tam lifgam. It's going to have a negative taste. A positive taste, which is considered a problem when it comes to chametz, is no sein tam lishvach. In other words, it's a real edible taste, and that's more problematic. But if it's something that's 24 hours old, so then it's called no sein tam lifgam, and then we're not as concerned about it. So let's say let's say you take a milchik spoon and you put it by accident into, and it's a clean milchik spoon, and you put it into a fleshik soup during the course of the year. So the spoon is going to need to, so it's a milchik spoon that you put into a fleshik soup. So the spoon you're going to need to kasher the spoon, which is very easy. We'll talk about in a second how you kasher the spoon. In terms of the soup's going to be okay for two different reasons. Number one, because, well, let's assume the spoon was not used for hot in the last 24 hours. And so if it wasn't used for hot in the last 24 hours, it's not going to disqualify any food, because any taste that's in that spoon is negative. It's considered inedible from a halachic perspective. And secondly, even if the spoon is ben yomo, if you put the spoon into the soup, it's most likely batel b'shishim. It's just such a small amount, so it's going to be nullified in 60 times the amount of the soup. So the soup will remain kosher, but you'll have to kasher the spoon. Why do I mention this with regards to koshering? You'll see in a moment. So how do you do Hagala? How do you do Hagala? There's four basic steps. There's four basic steps to Hagala. Number one, Hagala, meaning, like, let's say you want to kasher a pot, or you want to kasher silverware, or you want to kasher your kosot, your bechers on Shabbos, because those are washed with chametz over the course of the year. So you're going to want to kasher those as well. So what do you do? The first step in koshering for Hagala is to clean it well. Because whatever you're referring to, the first step is that it has to be cleaned well. The second step is that you should not use it for a period of 24 hours. And the reason for that is because if you try to kasher it within 24 hours, then the taste that's drawn out it's a good taste, and then it could go back in. So what we do is, that's why we usually wait 24 hours. So when the pot, it's a non-kosher pot, or it's a chametzik pot, and you want to kasher it, you've now waited 24 hours since the incident, right? Since your spouse, messed up in the kitchen and used the pot for the wrong thing, or used the silverware for the wrong thing. So you got to wait 24 hours. Why? Because, and you have to put it aside, and before it gets put back into the drawer, and then you forget where it is, you have to put it aside, wait 24 hours, and then when you put it, and then the third step is you put it into boiling water. And so when the taste comes out of the non-kosher item, it's going to be lifgam. It's an inedible taste. It's still a taste that needs to be taken out. You still have to kasher the pot or the spoon or whatever it is, but you've now waited 24 hours. So if the taste goes back in, it's going to be considered nosim tam lifgam, and we're not halachically concerned with that taste because it's considered inedible. If that's confusing to you, just put it aside. You don't have to worry about it. Let's get back to the four steps. The first step is you have to clean the pot well. Number two, don't use it for 24 hours. Number three, completely submerge it in boiling water. Okay, you don't want to use your bare hand to submerge it in boiling water. That's not a good idea. You have to try to remain to be safe when you're koshering your pots and utensils and ovens, etc. Koshering is different than tefillah, than toveling. If you remember, we just a few minutes ago we said that with China you don't have to tovel in a mikveh, but at the same time you can't kasher. There's a leniency, stringency. It's different rules for koshering and toveling. So with regards to toveling, you have to completely submerge the item in one in one shot, right? You have to put, and toveling is just basically metal and glass have to be toveled. Metal and glass, all types of metals and glass, and you put it completely into the mikveh, and it has to all go at once, because that's the law when it comes to mikveh. With regards to koshering, it's different. Koshering can be done in stages. And this is important because if you have a relatively big pot, let's say, and you have another big pot, but it's not big enough to put the pot in all at once, you could put the pot in partially, then you're able to rotate it and kasher the other part, and rotate it more and kasher the last part. Okay, you could do it in 2 steps, in 4 steps, as long as you have that pot in all its pieces, in all its surface area goes under the water, then you're fine. So you've cleaned it well. You don't use it for 24 hours. Completely submerge it either at once or in stages in a pot of boiling water. And then the fourth thing is after removing it carefully, so then you're supposed to rinse it in cold water. Those are the 4 steps. Those are the 4 steps of koshering. Okay, hold on one moment here. Okay. All right. So let's now apply some of these principles to some of the different things in the kitchen. So with regards to silverware and things of that nature, so that can be kashered very easily for Pesach through the concept of Hagala that I just described to you. Make sure they're clean. You wait 24 hours, and then throw them into a pot of boiling water. They can be in there just for a few seconds. Several seconds is enough. And then you take it out with the tongs or whatever it is, and you carefully take them out and you rinse it with cold water. Jumping over now to the appliances. And the same thing goes with pots. Okay, that's the same approach that you take with pots. And you could use any pot to kasher, as long as it's a clean, Einu ben yomo, that it hasn't been used in 24 hours and it's a clean pot. That pot can be used for koshering items that are not kosher. It can be used for koshering chametz, and when it koshers it, it makes it kosher and it makes it neutral, and so now it's kosher. It's kosher for Pesach. You could even use a chametz stick pot as long as it's clean Einu ben yomo. It's fine. You're welcome if you want to use a kosher Pesach pot. If you feel better about it, you can use that as well. Both are fine. With regards to an oven, now the food is not placed directly onto the walls of the oven, and that's going to be significant here, because if the food was placed directly onto the walls of the oven, then you might need what's called libun. What you do with an oven is the oven should not be used for 24 hours. We said that you have to clean the oven thoroughly, or have it cleaned with with an oven cleaner like Easy Off. And then you set the oven to the highest temperature, and you run it for an hour, and that is considered koshering the oven. If you have a self-cleaning oven, so then you're fortunate, then you're lucky if you're blessed to have a self-cleaning oven, and that's not only self-cleaning but it's self-koshering, and that's considered liban gomer because it gets to a very high temperature. All you have to do with a self-cleaning oven is you run it through one self-cleaning cycle, and then you're good to go. It's considered libun gomer. Technically speaking, when it comes to libun, where you're burning it out with a blowtorch, or you're doing the self-cleaning oven, which is a temperature that's considered like libun, technically speaking, you don't need to wait the 24 hours because you're burning out the chametz. It's working differently. It's a different mechanics and working through a different system than Hagala. Moving from the oven now to the microwave. Look, one idea is to survive over the course of Pesach without using a microwave. But if you want to kasher the microwave, the poskim say as follows: that what you do is again, you clean it well. Again, you don't use it for 24 hours, and then you kabolo kach polto. Remember that principle? The way it's absorbed, that's the way you remove the taste. So what you do is, right, the things get steamed up in the microwave. That's how it's used. What you do is you put a cup of water, a paper or styrofoam cup of water, and you run it for 10 minutes. And you run it for 10 minutes. Then when you be careful removing the water, and then I heard the psak that you should put it in again, do another cup of water for the spot, right? For the spot under the cup. In other words, you put the cup down, but the spot underneath the styrofoam cup is not receiving the steam from the koshering. And so there are those who are stringent to do it a second time and put the cup in a different place and to rinse and repeat. Basically here you put the styrofoam cup and in a different spot, and you do it for 10 minutes. With regards to the tray is glass, and glass is not kosherable. So either you need to replace or remove the tray, or what you do is you wrap it really well with saran wrap. Warming drawers, best to not kasher the warming drawers. Best to not use it on Pesach. I remember last year I gave a kula. We were all, just trying. We just kind of figure out. We were scrambling, and we're dealing with the incoming pandemic, and we're just trying to get ready. And last year, I gave the leniency that you could put the warming drawer on the highest temperature, and to double wrap the foods. But I would say the general halacha when it comes to warming drawers, I think this year we're more organized. I think we have a plan. We're still not out of the woods of the pandemic, but still, it's best to, when it comes to the warming drawer, to not use the warming drawer on Pesach, because the heat setting doesn't go high enough for it to be considered koshering. The stovetop. If you have a conventional gas range, so then the iron or metal grates can be koshered. And the way to kosher them is by covering it with a clean Eino Ben Yomo pot of water, or a clean blech, or a double layer of heavy-duty aluminum foil. The reason why I say to cover it is because that kind of helps contain the heat. And then you turn the burner on the highest setting for 12 minutes or so. And I suggest doing 2 at a time. You don't want to do all 4, all 6 at a time, because I heard that could ruin the oven. And that will kosher the grates. The grates, you don't put food directly onto that anyway, but sometimes food or chametz drips on that. So you do want to kosher those, and it can be koshered in that way, but by cleaning them, putting it on the highest setting for 12 minutes. The burners themselves do not need to be koshered. The actual burners do not need to be koshered, but just cleaned off. And the area between the burners and the grates should be cleaned and covered with aluminum foil or some separate covering. If you have a conventional electric stovetop, so then again you want to clean the burners, turn that on the highest setting for 6-7 minutes. The drip pans should just need to be cleaned, and the area in the middle again should be covered. If you have a glass or Corning or Saran smooth top range, so don't use for 24 hours and clean it. Put on the burners for 6-7 minutes, get it to a glow, and that's really the best you could do to kosher the burners. What about the rest of the area? Well, you have to be careful. You don't want to ruin it. You just have to be careful. Just make sure it's okay to pour boiling water on it. If you could pour boiling water on it without ruining it, then do that if possible. Or you place trivets on those areas where you want to place the pot down. But the area of the burner where you place the pot, that's going to be totally koshered by putting the fire on to the highest temperature. A broiler, that's more difficult to kosher. What I suggest with the broiler, clean the broiler pan and area, and don't
Can't hear you.
Pesach. Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you fine. It's Ayala's problem,
Yes.
not yours.
We hear you.
Okay, so I think Ayala was screaming to Mati that she can't hear him. Okay.
No, suddenly you were like blocking out. Okay.
No, he's
Okay.
fine. We hear him clearly.
Rabbi, have you ever heard of koshering putting silverware in dirt in the soil?
No, you shouldn't do that. Just follow the approach that I told you.
Okay.
There is
'Cause I
something
know
when it
someone
comes
who
to
did.
knives. When it
Yeah.
comes to knives, in certain situations, you could do that by putting it in the soil. But I don't recommend it even for knives. But just do what I suggested in terms of doing it in boiling water.
Are we asking questions? I have a few, if I may.
Not yet, Ayala. Give me a couple more minutes. Sinks, china or porcelain, cannot be koshered, and you need an insert. If you have a stainless steel sink, then what you do is pour boiling water over the sink. You could make an argument that you don't need to wait the 24 hours because you're pouring the water and it's immediately going down the drain. So I discussed this question with Rabbi Mordechai Willig, and he thought that if the water goes straight down the drain, maybe you don't need to wait the 24 hours. Same thing with the countertop. And so, but the key is to pour boiling water over the whole surface of the sink. That works as the form of irui rodchin, right? It became not kosher or chametzik with things falling on it or hot water going on it. So the way to kosher it is you pour the boiling water over it, and after you pour the boiling water over it, then you rinse it with cold water. With regards to countertops, some people feel better about covering them. It's part of this Pesach spirit. Others feel that they want to honor the holiday by not covering their beautiful countertops. So in my home growing up, that's my mom always, we had these pre-cut different wood covers of the counter that we just slapped on the counter, and we were done. If you want to use your countertop, what you should do is, look, the food, you don't usually have chametz hot food that goes directly on the counter. But as a stringency, you either should cover it or use boiling water. Use boiling water to kosher it. Marble, granite, stainless steel can be koshered. If it's porcelain, enamel, silestone, so then it should not be kosher. Then it's best for it to be covered. Dishwasher, if it's stainless steel or plastic, so then you wait 24 hours. You run it through one full cycle. Rabbi Willig suggested to me that you should do it through 2 cycles, one with soap and one without soap, and that'll kosher the dishwasher. If the dishwasher has porcelain or enamel interior, so then that can't be koshered. You'll have to survive a few days without the dishwasher. Now, with regards to the racks in the dishwasher, if it's smooth and it's clean, that's okay. If you have racks the racks in the dishwasher that have these cracks and some of it is rusted and it seems like it's hard to get it cleaned, that's going to be a problem. Because with regards to koshering, it has to be clean. You can't have stuff on it. Once it's clean, then you could remove and extricate the taste in it through koshering. So with regards to the racks, if it's smooth, it's okay. If it's cracked or you feel like it's hard to get it clean, you might need to get new or special Pesach racks, or again, survive without the dishwasher for a week. Tablecloths and napkins, just launder, and then you could use the cloth napkins or the cloth tablecloths, put in the laundry, you're good to go. High chair, clean it thoroughly, cover the tray with contact paper, and you're all set. Refrigerator, you want to clean that thoroughly, and the minhag is to line the shelves of the refrigerator and the freezer. You don't need to move out the refrigerator or the wall unit or the dresser from its location. You don't have to take it apart and clean out the different inside parts of the refrigerator. You don't need to do that. You just need to. There shouldn't be any chametz in your fridge or freezer. I don't recommend leaving any chametz in the fridge or freezer to include in the mechiras chametz, unless you have a separate. If you have a separate, freezer or separate fridge, that's not going to be used on Pesach, then that's fine. And you know that's the chametz area, and you're selling it. You're including it in your mechiras chametz. So that's fine. But if it's in the regular fridge or freezer that you use, it's best not to keep, chametz in there, even if it's marked as such. But with regards to the fridge, it's best to line the shelves. Kiddush cups, do Hagala, as I said, put it into boiling water. Silverware, throw it into boiling water, do Hagala. Glasses or china dishes, those shouldn't be koshered, as I said. And also remember, when you purchase items, remember that certain things, metal and glass, needs to be tovelled. And so separate from this whole area of koshering, right? When you purchase something, even if it's clean and even though there's nothing not kosher in it, in a certain sense, you have to convert it. If it was manufactured by a non-Jew, okay, if you purchase it's an Israeli product or it's manufactured by a Jew, then you're fine. But if it's manufactured by a non-Jew or a non-Jewish company, then you're going to have to tovel it. Okay, so that's some of the basics of the requirements for getting your home and kitchen ready. And now what I want to do is, before just the concluding remarks, let's open it for some questions.
Okay, a few.
Go ahead, Ayala.
Number one, I never heard, or I heard that wood items cannot be kosher because wood inevitably can have a nick in it or a scratch in it, and the chametz just gets in, and somehow you really can't get it out.
If there's many nooks and crannies or scratches in the wood, then you're right, because it's hard to clean it. But if the wood is smooth, if it's a pretty smooth wooden item, then it can be kosher.
Okay. The other thing is, you said you can kosher pots, but you didn't specify. If I have a pot, I don't kosher it. I have pots. I'm just curiosity. I have a pot that's stainless steel, but the handles are like a hard plastic. That can't be kosher.
So that can be kosher because the handle. Yeah, it's good to include that in the koshering, but that's really, the food is not really going on the handle; it's going in the pot. As I said before, I've heard from poskim like Rabbi Newberger and others that you are allowed to kosher plastic, which is why I tell people that I'm lenient and allow people to kosher plastic. And you're just talking about the handle. You're just talking about the handle anyway. So yeah, that pot with the handle can be kosher.
One other thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stone into the boiling water for the Hagala, because that's what I was told a long time ago, and that's what we've been doing.
Do you have to throw a stone into it?
We have a piece of granite, and we throw it to the water. Is that so the water boils over? I don't know why that is, but I do it because I was told it's supposed to be.
Okay, so let me explain the stone. If you're putting things into a boiling pot of water, so if you're koshering kosot, if you're koshering silverware, if you're koshering a small pot in a bigger pot, then you don't need the stone.
Okay.
Because the water is boiling. As long as the water is boiling and you throw the item in, you're good. If the water is boiling and then you throw a number of items in and then the water is no longer boiling, you gotta keep it hot. You gotta heat it up again to make sure the water is boiling. You don't need the stone. If you want to kosher the pot itself, then even then you do not need a stone. But here's what you need to do: you you fill up the pot to the very top,
right?
And then the water boils, and then the water will boil over. The idea of the stone that you heard, that's people did that but you kind of need a hot stone, and then you throw the stone in, and then it goes over the top.
Got it.
I've looked into this. I've discussed with poskim. You don't really need to do that. You just you just fill it to the very top, and then the water will boil over the sides, and then it koshers the pot, and you're all set. Vic, go ahead. Let's get some other. Yeah, Vic. Thank you, Ayala. Vic.
Quick question. It's kind of a new thing, but it never used to happen. But these days, you've got a package that gets dropped off on your front door. You look at it. Oh my gosh, what is it? 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I ordered Dr. Brown's cream soda, a case, and they didn't have it, and I forgot about it. But you know what? Suddenly it gets dropped off in your door. So can you? I certainly, when I appointed you my shaliach, I included anything that I might have ordered that just happens to get dropped off on my door. Is it with it? What happens if something like that happens? Can you just put it in a corner and cover it, assuming that it's was contemplated that it was sold in the mechira?
So when with regards to the mechira, just as a related point, you put onto the document the places where you're going to be putting the chametz and the approximate values. What I do as your rabbi, and because I care about you and all the people I sell the chametz for, so I sell all the chametz wherever the chametz might be found. So you have that in mind, Vic, but the truth, and also I have that in mind when I sell it to the non-Jew as well. If it's chametz that really you don't have in your possession yet, That's hard. Then it's hard to say that's included in the sale. I don't think that's included in the sale. But what I would say is, what I would do is, if anything package comes on Pesach, that you should not bring it into the house. You should not. You should say out loud, "I do not acquire possession of this item," and so this way you never acquire ownership of it, and you leave it outside your house. And also make sure you use something online that sends you your products, right away, so that it doesn't come 2-3 weeks later.
Yeah, it just happens these days. Never used to happen.
Just make
but
sure
it
to
just
leave
happens.
it. Make sure to just make. I would say to leave it outside and to verbally articulate that I am not accepting ownership of this item. And you can go even further after you do that. If there's if it's a product or two that are really that are chametz, then give it to a non-Jew, give it to a non-Jewish worker out on the street or something like that. Just get rid of it. It's burning it. But anyway, yeah, Madeline, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I asked, is there no Koshering day anywhere this year?
One of the services that Beth Jacob has offered our members over the years that I don't think most shuls do, but we've offered it as Koshering. But last year we didn't do it, and this year also because of the challenge of we would have to do it outdoors and keep these big vats of water boiling. We thought about it, we looked into it, we discussed it, but it's just too complicated. So at least Beth Jacob is not offering Koshering this year. But I just explained to you that, and Madeline, give me a call if you want. But I think hopefully this it's not too complicated. You get your biggest pot that you have, and it's clean and it's Eina Ben Yomo. You put it on your stovetop, you fire it up, fill it with boiling water, and then you're able to kosher, a lot of your items in that. If it's something that's so big that you can't, put into something else, then you could fill it with boiling water and just let the water, go over the edges.
But I don't really have that much, just in general. But I have a couple other questions, or maybe it's the same question in perhaps the form of minhagim. I'm not sure this year any case, because if we don't do an actual biur chametz, I'm kind of stuck. So one thing was people who had a minhag to keep a piece of matzah or the afikoman from the previous year to burn with a chametz. And another one that I can't remember what source, about taking the lulav from the previous year and also burning it at the same time.
Yeah, I've heard of that school of saving the piece of matzah and people holding the matzah in their purse, and that it brings good luck. But also in terms of I don't know if there's any basis to that, or I have never seen any, but I've heard of it. With regards to the lulav, the question is, what do you do with the lulav after you use it on Sukkot? So strictly speaking, what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to just put it into a garbage bag, and you can discard it. The Gemara says that with regards to Sefer Torah or Tefillin or Mezuzah, those are Tishmishe Kedusha. You can't throw those out. But with regards to a lulav that's no longer being used, or an esrog that's no longer being used, or even a talit, if it's a talit that's no longer being used, then you're really allowed to put it into, you throw it out respectfully. You put it in its own bag and you throw it out. So you're allowed to throw out the lulav. But what some people do is they save the lulav and the arba minim for biur chametz. So this way they're kind of using it, to do another mitzvah. So they're not just discarding it, they're kind of like discarding it, but doing a mitzvah. That's the basis of that custom.
Using it as the fuel to burn
right.
it. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Here, in any case, we would have to just throw it out, right? We can't do a biur anyhow with this stuff.
This year you do biur on Friday morning. You do biur on Friday morning. You burn the chametz that you find Thursday night and other chametz you might have around. You burn that on Friday morning. But you're still able to save if you want to have chametz Friday afternoon, Friday night, Shabbos morning until 10:30. Then that's put into a secure spot. But everything else you do burn. You do biur chametz on Friday morning. We're working. The rabbis in the community are working together to see if we could arrange a community biur chametz this year.
Okay.
I have a couple questions that came in through the chat box, and then I'll take some other questions. One question is, what about a kiddush cup? A kiddush cup you should do a Hagala by putting it into boiling water. A hot water urn is just used for water. So just pour boiling water over the spout, all the directions of the spout. In other words, put it over the sink and pour boiling water all over the spout. That'll kosher the whole spout. And the water urn itself is just used for water. So then you're fine. The blech gets dirty and stained, and I would have a separate blech for Pesach. Question was asked to use a pot that's already kosher for Pesach. Okay, but I just answered that. Good, that's right. You could use a kosher for Pesach pot, but you don't have to use a kosher for Pesach pot as long as it's a clean and eino ben yoma pot. Then that could be used to kosher other items. The way to kosher a non-self-cleaning oven is that you clean it, you wait 24 hours, and then you put it on the highest temperature for an hour. The reason why that works really, that's a whole discussion why that works, but because the oven is chametz because of the steam, right? The chametz in the oven is always in a tray. It's always in a, it's in a pan, right? Or it's a disposable tin or whatever it is that's in your oven. It's not on the wall or on the grate of the oven. It's really the steam of the oven that makes the oven chametz. So what you do is you put it on the highest temperature. That creates the same level of steam that kind of just steams out the oven. Of course, with nothing in it, you just steam out the oven for an hour. Kasha the dishwasher, then you just you run it through the cycle. I said twice. This was another question that came in. How to kasha dishwasher? You do it 2 times, one with soap, one without soap, and that kashers the dishwasher. But that's assuming if it's a stainless steel wall or a plastic wall, then you can kasher the dishwasher. Even in that case, I spoke about the racks. You have to make sure that you can get the racks clean. Okay, this is a good question. Can you steam clean countertops? Yes. If you want to, instead of pouring boiling water over it, which makes a big mess, so you have to get one of these really strong steamers and go over the whole surface area of the counter. That'll be considered koshering the counter. The whole idea of koshering the counter is, look, we take Pesach, we go above and beyond when it comes to Pesach, and we do a lot of stringencies. But with regards to the counter, there's not really hot stuff going directly onto the counter. But we do cover it and we do try to kosher it as I explained. Okay, here's the question that came in here is, what do you do about crumbs or dirt that get in between the double pane of the oven? So for that, that's where you have that weapon of bittul. I'm not sure what you mean, meaning it gets in there and you can't see it and it falls down there. We've tried to disassemble it and clean it, and 2 years in a row, the oven broke Erev Chag and wasn't usable. So thank you for the person who sent that in. You tried to disassemble it and clean it and you broke the oven. That's why I'm telling you, you don't have to take apart the appliance where it says, don't take this apart. And you don't have to pull the fridge out and, clear the whole areas, behind the counters and behind the fridge. What you just want to do for the crumbs and dirt that might be there or might not be there, number one, they're inedible. And number two, what you do is you do bittul. You have that in mind in the kol chamir v'chamiyah that you do Thursday night and Shabbos morning. That's you take care of the crumbs that way. To just put them away for Pesach. Toaster, George Foreman grills, pasta makers, bread machine, crock pots. I have this list of items. These are items you should just put away with the chametz utensils. You should not use those on Pesach. All right, so thank you all so much. Just to conclude, hopefully this clarified a lot of the different requirements for Pesach, to get your home ready, to get your kitchen ready. There's a concept in Judaism called lefum tzara agra, which means according to the effort is the reward. And so as you engage in the effort, I would just say to try to be besimcha. And the preparation itself has religious value. And so it should give you a good feeling when you're preparing for the holiday and you're working hard for it. Again, don't go overboard. Don't get carried away, as I explained. But any work that you do put into the holiday, you do it besimcha, be happy about it. And there's religious value to the preparation, and you'll be rewarded for it. And the Gemara has a beautiful comment. It says that if we go above and beyond in halacha, like benching. We just bench on a small amount of matzah or a small amount of bread during the year. We bench. We go above and beyond in many ways, certainly with Pesach. So Hashem hopefully will go above and beyond with us and show us favor as well. Okay, so wish everyone lots of success in getting ready for Pesach. Thank you so much for joining this workshop. And stay safe, stay well. Hope to see you soon. And I wish you lots of success in everything you do in these coming weeks. I'm sure it's going to work out great. And looking forward, hopefully you could join us for next week's workshop when we're going to talk about the balancing act between, the couple days before Pesach, navigating Shabbos and Erev Pesach. Thank you again. And
Thank you. Thank you so
Maybe
So
much.
informative. It
Sure.
was terrific. Thank you.
Fabulous. This was wonderful. Thank you so
Very
much.
Thank
informative.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.